Well, it was like um something that I was playing with, like macro versus micro time signatures.
Right.
Where, for example, if you have a phrase of 4/4 and 4 bars, that's 16 beats to play with.
You are now listening to Musician Interviews with Brandon Johnson. The piece that you hear is a string quartet by Brooklyn-based composer Kristian De Leon. He has taken time out of his busy day to talk about this very piece entitled Brain Curry. Thank you so much for being here, man. I really
Yeah,
appreciate you doing this.
for sure. And I appreciate you looking at the score. I think it's a funny piece of music.
Yeah,
Really, really complicated, but it's just a funny piece of music.
yeah. So I remember we talked about the melody in the beginning a couple weeks ago, the microtonal melody. You want
Mhm.
to shed some light on that, the nuances and all that?
Um, Honestly, I was just like, it made me laugh. Like genuinely, a lot of the music, it just made me laugh. I was keying it into Sibelius, and I was like, what if I just did this? And I had this like rolling, oscillating, like lumpy, genty, like Tigran Hamasyan, like very like I know I'm going like this because it's like very like it feels like this for the first happening of the song.
Yeah.
And I had not the main melody theme, but I actually had the full ensemble attack written first, and then I retrofitted the main melody into that. Yep, up, 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 yeah,
Hmm. Yeah. I noticed you pass it up the score throughout, which was pretty clever for like texture and development,
mm-hmm.
you know. And that might actually answer my next question because you have a lot of different time signatures in there. But I did see a 9/8 5/8 7/8 theme that was kind of recurring. What was your thoughts behind the different time signatures?
Well, it was like something that I was playing with, like macro versus micro time signatures.
Right.
Where, for example, if you have a phrase of 4/4 and 4 bars, that's 16 beats to play with. And if you break it out even more, that's 32 eighth notes to play with. And like our 4/4 understanding is that it's going to be four equal pairs of like strong and weak, and then four of those.
Yeah.
So what if it wasn't that? And like what if it was like 3 plus 5 plus 2? And like what is it? What is a 5 except a pairing of a 3 and a 2, or a 2 and a 3?
Okay, so your thoughts were just like, what are the different ways I could like divvy the freight, like the amount of time that I have or amount of beats that I have or working with?
Yeah, because like honest to God, if I should say, I hate chords. I hate developing chords. I hate putting chords together. I hate harmony. I'm not good at it. It scares me. I can fully say that. I'd much rather sit in a space with like a 1 to a 5 to a 6 and oscillate that, as long as the development of the rhythm and the texture behind is like the thing. That's because that's really what I hear. I hear like the this and like the shifting and the pulling of the texture, and like whatever, if this sound is the 1 chord into the 5 chord, great. If it's the 5 chord for a while, or if it's like instruments oscillating and repeating and like getting really granular, awesome. I just don't care about the chord all that much.
That's cool. That's an interesting way to think. I don't know if I would say I'm the opposite, but I like harmony because that's kind of how I have developed my thing. Kind of like start with like a few chords and then I spin that off in any way I want. But that's an interesting way to look at it. Huh. That's really
Well, it's
cool.
also like really funny because if you look at the rest of my stuff, it's actually very chordy and like very heady, and like even the rest of the piece, it's very like noodly, and I don't know, maybe I do like chords secretly and just don't want to admit it. I don't know, but like my first instinct is not to write for chords in the way that you might. My first instinct is to, how can I break this? You know?
That. I like that. I really like the we have this reverse reverb effect. You have quite a bit. I feel like it inspires intrigue in the piece. What was your thoughts about that with the harmonics and like the harmonic trills and and all that. There was a lot of natural harmonics, but there was also artificial as well. What was your thoughts about going in and out of those?
I really just wrote what made sense for the harmony or made sense for the melody. And like you and I have both share the history of like writing for percussion ensemble and like writing a little bit more immediately and quickly gratifying music and like in a short amount of time, and developing it that way. Like that's just what drum corps music and like percussion ensemble and like competitive indoor stuff is, right? Like we have themes and textures, and like the really easy way to add intrigue to that is to add decorations around the main meat. And I was like, oh, I really want like a cymbal, or I really want a stinger, or I really want something of that texture, and then just translating that effect of perhaps a cymbal writing in like a you know type thing.
Yeah.
But how does that translate? And that is for me high non-specific unpitched sound that is either a touch for false harmonic within the melody or within the harmony, or it's a touch for false harmonic or open harmonic that is just kind of a flying noise that comes in and comes out of nowhere. Because like if you, for me, when I got to the end of like writing the section, I didn't think about it as accents to the melody. It's just like a noise that flies in and it goes, shh, and then the rest of the stuff keeps going on.
Yeah, okay. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, it makes sense to my ears, but I wanted to kind of hear you talk about it, and it's just like sheds a lot of light. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really because like like I wasn't a writer before this. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't really write percussion. I didn't write anything outside of percussion lit. So like this string quartet was my big first piece out of percussion lit, and I did what I was comfortable with, and I was just translate percussion lit to string quartet.
Yeah, that's cool. In my opinion, you seem to kind of prime the ears before each movement. What are your thoughts about like transitions and how you did these transitions?
Well, the more I got into it, I realized that this piece really is just one big transition.
Okay.
It's just like here's a thematic motive, like the introduction to that cello stuff, and then the first strain of movement one is like the material, and then there's that 1B section with all the falling scales and like all the running around. That is actually the transition material from that first strain to the first strain of the second movement, or that first theme rather.
Hmm.
It's like in well, it's out of time. It's lumpy. It's like awkward and it's kind of groovy, and then it shuffs it through a metamorphosis of transition. Things that are awkward, like let's just like face facts. Like the movement in the first section is lumpy. It's awkward. It's really difficult to like grasp onto. Very like unconventional in that regard. And then the second movement is like super clean. And I was like, what's the farthest away I can get from this? And the next iteration for that for me was like super clean, super in time, um, predictable harmony, predictable movement, predictable everything, as opposed to the chaos that was before. And then the material that runs into the all the scalar stuff, all like the weird like pizzicato mess, is leaving that lumpiness and like violently per se turning into order.
Yeah, I found that very effective, that contrast, especially the tempo, like segueing into movement too. Like I felt like I didn't know where it was going, and then you slid down, jigga jigga digga dum. I felt like I was just like whoa, in like some sort of Mad Max like bullet time like kind of thing going on. So was that a metric modulation or was that just a hard tempo change?
Um, 16th note equals 16th note. It's a meter change.
Okay.
What I remember, it's like lumpy bum 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 ba to this like running 16th note digga 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 digga.
Okay. That's cool. Yeah, they handled it pretty well in that recording and everything. That's probably why it was so effective.
Yeah, they really nailed it. Which is surprising because they only had 1 hour to rehearse the whole piece.
Harmonically in the beginning of movement two, correct me if I'm wrong, but I briefly analyzed it and it seemed like there was like some sort of C Lydian thing going on. Could you talk about maybe what you were thinking harmonically right there? You get dum, that kind of
I
part.
I was really using that second section to just play with the instruments as like an idiot percussionist would, like hold my beer. I'm gonna touch this thing for a while. I'm gonna feel like how does this string go here, and like what happens if I do this, and like what it was like the exploration of like the neck, like string crossings, because this idea is so foreign to me. Like I'm a piano player, percussionist, like intuitively I put my stick on this thing and it makes one noise. It makes this one pitch and it makes like I guarantee. But like violin world, string world, I can play A here, 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 I can do touch four here, and I can do like the bottom half of the three here, and like I can. I was like, what the hell's going on? It started as just like a combination. Like if you look at the voicings of each chord, it's actually marimba mallets,
Oh, okay.
open
Yeah,
fifths,
they'll
yeah,
fit. Yeah, they'll
and like
fit.
duck 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 dunk, and then like this thing, bong 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 bong,
Yeah.
and then it's really really a lot of it is like how do marimba voicings, open fifths and open sevenths with the distance work between the whole score, um, and that combined with the challenge of, well, this instrument, the viola and the cello, are built in bass C major, because it's C, G, D, A on the open strings. And I
Yeah.
really wanted the most rich resonant possible sound. And that's part of the reason why I think that transition is so successful, because it's like stopped craziness, and then it goes yaga daga daga dum, and they let the resonance go free.
Yes.
It's just like and it just like opens up, because it's written on an open C chord, because the cello and the viola and the bottom two strings of these violins all resonate within C9.
Yeah. That's cool. I just noticed that you used that I don't really want to call it a leading tone, but maybe it was just for melody's sake, that F sharp in there. And it was like kind of recurring. That's why I thought is this like Lydian? You probably weren't thinking a mode that way, but it just kind of, my interpretation was kind of like, it's kind of cool.
Well, you got me. I do love a sharp four. I love a flat seven. I love a sharp four. You got me.
I got
Yeah,
you.
yeah. I
I
love the
was just
Lydian.
trying
I
to,
love a mixed Lydian. Okay, this is also super nerdy. Mellophones, sharp four.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
why.
Yeah.
It just feels good for me. Um,
Those marching things come through. Yeah.
yeah, and then the harmonic oscillation between one and minor three is because I figured out that cellos can actually do a bar five, a bar fifth. It's just if you keep it in like the low side, and then like if you keep it like really easy on like just those two things, then that you could have some sort of forced harmonic motion, but it's still technically open.
Hmm.
And then the other thing about that section, the technique wise, is I'm sure you noticed that there are some things in the violins and the viola where there's like the open G string and open D string, and then the other note is just high as shit. That's another effect of like, so you can get like really weird intervals. You can break a ninth, you can break a 13th. You can just like, as long as the bottom note is open, stopped.
Yeah. Very useful and idiomatic for the instrument. So that's pretty cool, man.
I spent a lot of time staring at the Adler violin diagrams. Like, a lot of time.
Could you talk about like that? There's like this sustained yearning sounding melody that develops, and I feel like that really gets to the climax of the piece when you start to break apart those 16th notes and it starts to like underlap, if I could say. So like what was the thought about that melody when everybody starts to sustain for just a brief moment and then we kind of get back into those 16 notes?
Well, it's a weird augmentation thing I was playing with at the time. Because this is also when I was writing a bunch of electronic music for another reason, and I was really getting into like now I do a lot of ambient granular synthesis and like electronic work, and this is kind of the beginning of that. Um, so I was figuring out a lot of things at the time. Therapy is wonderful. um, but that is kind of a result, because I there was this, because of the melody rising between the harmony, I keyed into that, like, oh, this is already happening. This is already going la ti do re mi fa. Um, and then I love a sultry viola moment. So I put a melody that accentuates that kind of moment into like in extreme augmentation over the full frame. And I was like, oh, this just sounds good. Sounds warm and wholesome. And then I just like, what if I just double it, but then I put it in the wrong place? Because in Logic or in Ableton, you can just like take the same material and just like shook over.
Mhm.
So I just did that, and I found ways to like weave it in, and then um, it like is one section, and it's one section, and then it starts to do this like terracing thing where they're all starting to do it, and then like this the texture of like that rigidity turns into laminar flow. So it's like we're like it's like all layers, and they're all like going in the same direction, and then it just so happens that it ends on a really nice harmony, and then it brings back that oscillating thing. But that's where that comes from. It's not necessarily that I made an intuitive choice to layer that long form melody. I was just like, what happens when I start it in different places, and what melodies happen and what harmonies happen when I hold it in the wrong place. Once again, I'm having fun. I'm like breaking it. I'm like, destroying format.
So in this third movement, I roughly analyzed that first 5 bars or so, and then I saw this, and these are all like more or less harmonic implications, I guess. Like so like a C minor, B flat major, A flat major, D flat, and B flat. Um, what was your thought process behind? I know you said harmony you weren't thinking about. When I started to get into analyzing it, it kind of just like went like butter. I was like, this is like almost obvious, but it might not be. What was your thoughts?
That's when I got over myself, and I was like, you know what? Fuck it, harmony.
Yeah, cool.
Because like for the first time in the entire piece, you have proper like harmonic function. It's not this exploration in a modal form, and it's not this like running mode speed up and down and like thing, and it's not pop music. Because I would the I have to say I wrote it in our previous conversations, but How to Train Your Dragon, John Powell, huge influence on second movement. Like just what a great score that is. And I was listening to Valencia a lot at the time, the Caroline Shaw album, and On Tract. When you click on Spotify, it just plays whatever.
Yeah.
And On Tract came on a lot. So
Hmm.
as I was finishing out this like weird laminar, like fluid, blah blah blah, um, I did this like, what if I just did do a 5-1? And I think I put exactly one proper 5-1 in the style of On Track Yum Bam Bam
Mhm.
in the music. And I was just me like, yeah, fuck it. Fucking harmony.
That's cool.
Yeah. And another piece that really influenced that whole thing is this piece called Many Cadences by Sky McClay. And it's like a Passacaglia of sorts, where it's like 6,000 5-1, 5-1, 5-1, 5-1 all around the circle in like many different ways. And it made me laugh a lot. So I put it in.
Okay. I also saw that you brought back the microtonality because, like, I didn't really see it in the second move, but I saw it in the first and third. Was that a callback to the first movement, or was it just a new idea?
I think it was a new idea. I don't really remember. I just know that I heard it happen on a lot of Chris Thiele's music. Punch Brothers is a huge influence. Yo Ma's group Goat Rodeo with Chris Thiele. I was listening to a lot of that during this music. And I just really liked like that like yearning folky mandolin sound that he kind of gets out of it. So I just put it in, and I thought it was also like hokey and silly, and like it, pizzicato is so like exact. Like, what
Yeah.
if it was wrong?
Yeah. I kind of got some Xenakis vibes from that when I listened to it. Well, we had studied, forgot the piece, but in Rob's class,
Trust.
yeah, we studied it, and then I listened to it, like, oh, there's kind of like that, like that improvisatory sounding kind of pits stuff.
Oh, that part is really funny. Where it says like spicy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wrote these chords that I thought would work really well. And they didn't. There are these harmonies that I like took my violin that I had, and I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I'm just bad at the violin and it just sounds bad, or maybe my violin's bad. Turns out it was just bad. And I had them do this thing where they go down and back up, because like why not? Because I figured if you can pitch like this, then why not pitch with the thumb all the way down, right? Like right.
Hmm.
And then, because if you can pitch like this and strum this way, then why not strum that way? But turns out they don't really like to be told to metrically go down in a rhythm, but they like to individually. So like
Hmm.
the whole like, controlled strum thing was difficult for them, especially going on the way back up because they weren't sure which way to do it because they also had the bow in their hand, um, and the harmonies just sounded really jank. And Rob was like, "It's really kind of sounds awesome when it's jank like this because it just it really does in a like at the end of the day accentuate the spirit of spicy peppers."
Yeah. Yeah. I when I read about that in the email interview and I listened, I'm like, yeah, that actually does go. Like, yeah, that the idea. I felt like you portrayed the food ideas pretty effectively, in my opinion.
I think that's when the piece title really ended up being a thing. Like
Right.
green, like when I started the third movement, that's when all the pieces started to fall together. And like the full picture was forming, and Rob made that hilarious joke about brain curry, and I was like, sold, love it.
So
So
you retroactively named the other movements after you kind of completed three?
no, I retroactively named the movements when I was starting three.
Okay. I'm just
Yeah.
trying-
And I was like, haha, I guess this is about spicy curry now, and ran with it. Um, and yeah, that's why that's the way that it is. Because I was fully like, that
Yeah,
energy.
exactly.
Yeah,
I would imagine.
yeah.
Wow. Is there anything else that you would like to say, any pertinent information that we haven't maybe covered?
Um, it was really stressful.
Okay.
There's like it was a lot of writing to do. A lot of the guiding spirit of this piece of music was it has to be good,
Yeah.
which was a lot of unfair pressure to put myself realistically, because it was my first time doing the thing. It was my first big project going to grad school in a major that I was not before. Um, so I just like gave up at some point at, like when you point at like a 12-year-old and you're like, do a good job. And they
Mhm.
get stressed.
Yeah.
Like I was feeling that, um, telling myself, you better do a good job. And then I told myself, like, what if I just didn't do a good job and had fun with it? Um, and then that's when things started to open up. Um, and then that's that at that point, there was like that short score and the first one I sent you. And then as soon as I said I'm just gonna have fun with it, I'm just gonna see where things go. I'm gonna like break things open and explore. That's when all like that fun, good nuance of like transitions or like little details, like why does this hang out for a little bit longer than the other ones, and like really particular things. There's like a one transition that I remember where the strings hold on to a harmony for a little bit longer than you thought you should, and that's because I laughed and I was like, what if I just did this? um and like that's the whole spirit of the piece, and that's that's what I took away from the piece. I was just like, what if I just had fun, and like what if I made music not necessarily for a goal, not for competition, not to get into school, but like just fucking do it, just have fun.
Thank you for tuning in to Musician Interviews with Brandon Johnson. This interview was made possible by the BMJ Music Publishing Company, LLC, and New York University.